Hello, everyone. Welcome once again back to TASI TV. Today, we have a very special guest, the influential Dr. Douglas Graham, author of various books on health, healing, and fitness, and in particular, the 80-10-10 diet, this landmark book, which had been such an influence and affected so many of us. This book, I think, Doug, really put natural hygiene back on the map. It certainly did for me. I had drifted. I've been influenced by natural hygienists, Herbert Shelton and people like that. Back in the early 80s, actually, what got me into natural hygiene was the book Fit for Life, which isn't really a blatant natural hygiene book, but it's definitely heavily influenced by natural hygiene. It's more or less a natural hygiene book, kind of a very entry level, a natural hygiene for the general public. And it had a profound influence on me. And that was back in 1984. And then I read Gandhi's autobiography, which had another really profound influence, only to find that he was heavily influenced by Herbert Shelton, and Gandhi practiced natural hygiene. So I read the Gandhi's autobiography for several reasons, and one of them was because he was had a fruit-based diet. But what happened was, in the early 2000s, I had actually realized that I wasn't alone, because I was really thought I was alone in this journey. There weren't anybody that I knew that were doing this natural hygienic approach. And so I got involved, and I found out there were raw food communities online, but a lot of them were into that whole high fat thing. And then I discovered Gourmet Raw. And so I kind of drifted into that and experimented with that for a few years, and I wasn't getting good results. My digestion was actually better when I followed Arnold Arrett's approach, who I was heavily influenced by in the 90s, but I was eating some cooked food. I was eating maybe 5 or 10% of my diet from cooked food, but the mucus lean type of cooked food. So it was, potatoes and steamed vegetables. I found that, and then the 90% was raw fruits and things like that. I found that worked better than this high fat thing and the Gourmet Raw thing. And then in 2009, I read this and I said, I've forgotten where I started. I started doing this type of thing. But this book is so detailed that it really got me back into natural hygiene in earnest, and I haven't looked back since. And that was back in 2000. Here we are, 13 years later. And every word of this book has proven true in my life. And I think in many people's lives, people actually refer to the diet that they're doing as 80-10-10, which is amazing. 80-10-10 is synonymous with natural hygiene, or a fruit-based, species-specific diet. So what really inspired you to write this book?
Thanks, Mark. I'll tell you, Mark, the inside story on that book is basically that it was difficult for me to get a word in edgewise in what was a burgeoning movement called the raw food movement.
Yeah.
And I mean, I went to the raw food festivals in San Francisco back in the 90s, but like you, my roots were hygiene. I started looking at hygiene in the late 70s, early 80s, and never looked back. I mean, it just worked too well.
Yeah.
It made too much sense to be responsible for my own health, to give my body what it needed. Like we would take care of house plants or prize hog or something. And you just give it what it needs, like we do with our kids. We give them what they need and they thrive. If we don't give them what they need, they demonstrate symptoms of all kinds, whether those are physical, emotional, social, it didn't really matter. So it just worked so well. I go, this is what I'm looking for. As I went through my through my doctorate training, chiropractic college, going, wow, this just reinforces over and over and over again. The science is proving the philosophy. But when I got into lecturing and speaking in the raw food movement, which was big for the first time in 100 years. I mean, there had been a big raw food movement back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, which got squashed by the introduction of the term germs from the medical establishment. They said, cook everything. And
pasteurize
so the
everything.
raw food movement took a nosedive.
Yeah.
But it was resurfacing 100 years later, and here it was. And I was pretty much overwhelmed in terms of numbers. My message, it was sort of my message against the world. The world was saying, as long as it's raw, it's fine. High fat, high salt, high stimulant, high irritant, and just keep going. And in the behind the scenes, none of those folks were actually eating all raw, but that's a different story. And it's not for me to judge.
Yeah.
But I wanted to have my say on a platform where I could go in depth. And so I started writing 80-10-10 back in 2000, after having first coined the phrase in 1999 at a lecture that I gave in Hawaii. It was the first time I actually said I'd run a health retreat from 86 to 96 where we served 80-10-10, but I didn't know what I was doing or why it was working. And I had to look into the science behind it all until I was absolutely sure. And then, as I say, in 1999, I finally said, look, more than 80% of your calories have to come from carbohydrates or we're in trouble. And the world's leading vegan doctors are all saying that. They're just saying it with cooked food. I wonder what would happen if we did it with raw food. How would we go about it? And I started looking at it, and then it took me 5 years to not only express myself well through a series, 5 different kinds of editing, but also to make sure that the facts were straight. And the cool thing is the book came out in 2006, and so far, no one's been able to say, hey, that word or that phrase or that concept, that doesn't make sense scientifically. If that's not right, then everything else isn't right. But nobody's found the first chink in the armor, as it were, and I understand that, like me, or probably like you, nobody wants to go raw, forever, 100%, never look back. I mean, that wasn't my goal either. It just became the obvious thing to do. It was the right thing to do. And to me, that matters a lot. I have to look at myself in the mirror every day. I have my own health and performance goals that I intend to reach. And in order to do that, taking care of myself, I don't have time for sick days. I haven't, had sick days in 4 decades plus, and I really don't have time for sick days. I don't want to have time for sick days.
Sure.
Either.
Absolutely.
I like to be productive every day.
Yeah.
So I wrote the book just kind of as a way of, it wasn't so there. I mean, I'm not vindictive. I simply wanted to put out my point, my side of the story.
Sure.
In an uninterrupted platform.
Yeah.
And a book was the way to do it.
Yeah. Almost for the record, just to get this stuff down in one concise volume. Yeah. And the thing about it is, these things that you talk about are achievable for anybody. We don't have to have colds. We don't have to have flus. And, I didn't even realize, but you have Koch's postulates in the book. That went right over my head. So, because like you said, the germ theory is kind of hijacked the real science behind this whole health movement. When Rockefeller came in, of course, it went back to Pasteur, right? Pasteur with his erroneous theories, which were debunked by Antoine Bouchamp anyway.
It's a fascinating world, really, because here we are, what, 140 years later, still referring to the germ theory.
Amazing.
But it has yet to be proven in 140 years. Like,
right.
Nobody's referring to the germ fact.
Right.
Nobody's referring to the law of germs.
Right.
It's not a law. It's not a fact. In fact, now more than ever, people are saying, you know what? Maybe it's not the germ theory. Maybe it's exosomes all along. Maybe it's coming from the body and the cell. It's coming from the cells outward rather than from the outside world inward. Maybe it's not I opened the window and influenza, but maybe it's just the way I took care of myself resulted in symptoms.
Right. Dr. Robert Young calls it an outfection, not an infection, but an outfection. So it's coming from within. It's the body's means of cleaning itself. Because we have to face it, the average person, their diet is so far from our natural species specific diet. It has consequences. And the body has this amazing mechanism of constantly seeking homeostasis. No matter how far we go from that, the body always, in its intelligence, seeks to get back to that, and it will do whatever. So in the case of the average person, it's colds, flus, or even worse diseases.
I think a lot of people don't credit how far we've come or gone astray. How little room for error is left.
Right.
In other words, they talk about the environmental clock and how it's 11:59 p.m. on the environmental clock, but I think on the mental health clock, on the physical health clock, on the social health clock, we can see that we're also really at 11:59. We've pushed the limits about as far as we can push them and still call ourselves human.
I know.
So let alone healthy humans outperforming the humans who came before us. There's not a lot of that anymore. There's not a lot of outperforming. There's not a lot of records being broken all the time. Yes, records are still falling, but I'm not impressed by the overall health that I'm seeing, where the average American is out with 18 days of sickness a year. That's average these days.
Right.
Not a good sign.
No, it's not a good sign.
We came to a point in the last generation. It was the first generation ever that wasn't automatically born more healthy than their parents. Like, you could take a asthmatic and somebody with diabetes, and they could get together and have kids, and they'd still be, and you have a 7-pound perfect baby boy, perfectly healthy baby boy, or whatever.
Sure. Right.
We expected them to have healthy kids. The last generation is the first time that it ever occurred where people weren't automatically going to have kids more healthy than themselves. This generation, the generation that's being born today, is the first generation in the history of man that isn't expected to outlive their parents.
Just incredible.
Which is going to be a tough road to hoe for a lot of people. But what a concept that kids should always outlive their parents.
Of course. That's a
and
staggering.
We're not looking at that right now. This has been officially stated that the kids being born today are not expected to outlive their parents on average.
Shocking. That's really shocking. Well, when you look at Pottinger's cats, you see that study showed clearly that there's a multi-generational degradation of health, in the cats anyway. And that was a simple study. All he did was feed one group of cats cooked food, another group of cats raw food. They fed them their natural species-specific diet. Cats are carnivores. So they fed the raw meat to one group of cats and I guess cooked meat to the other group of cats. And it didn't really turn out well. And I think that's what we're experiencing as humans. And this has gone on for well, hundreds of years since we migrated out of our natural habitat, which is the tropical forest, but it's become really pronounced in the past 100 years with the hijacking of the medical system, with this Rockefeller medicine that is now being practiced in the past 100 years. And then the advent of this processed food industry, that's probably since what, maybe the 50s and 60s. So people are not even eating food anymore. They're eating food-like substances. I did a video on this one time, and I said, the food shortage has already begun. If you go to the supermarket, there's no food in there. There's the produce section.
19 aisles and only one of them has food.
Just amazing. And even that has been poisoned, right? I mean, with the pesticides and so it's a tough road to hoe if we don't have guidance. And the problem is these things have been normalized, this really abhorrent, unnatural lifestyle that we are considered extreme. I've been called extreme, you don't know how many times, by people who can't even run around the block. And that was one of the things that was really impressive about this book, was the emphasis that you put on fitness. I don't think you're going to find that in any other book of its kind. The emphasis put on fitness. In fact, in here, this is really good. I like to cover this section, but you are not following 80-10-10 if, and one of the points is you burn less than 40% of your total calories through physical activity, at least 800 calories per day if you average 2,000 calories. Now, I don't think there are many people doing that.
No, there's not very many people doing that. And it doesn't mean you have to go out and exercise to do it. You could do it in your job. You could do it in your pastimes. You could do it in your hobbies.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to go run 8 miles or 10 or 12, or it depends on the person and the weight.
Right.
But, there's no way to be a healthy individual if you're not also an active individual. And there's reasons for that. All the creatures of the planet are healthy, and all of them are fit and active. They have to go get their food for the most part. Even the grazers have to, the average horse out in the wild walks 18 miles a day.
Wow.
They cover some ground.
Yeah.
So it's nature's model that all creatures are active, fit. And the reason for that is that food isn't just nutrients. Okay. Food's got flavors, food's got a lot of water, food's got a ton of fiber, which is indigestible. There's only a tiny, tiny bit of each piece of food we eat that is actually the nutrients in the food. And if we took identical twins, one of whom was, let's say, a video game player professionally, and the other one was a triathlete, we could understand that one might get all the calories that they need on 2,000 calories a day, where the other might need 4,000 or 6,000.
Sure.
Get just to maintain weight.
Right.
But the person eating 4,000 calories, if they're eating identical food, would get twice as much iron and twice as much protein and twice as much calcium and twice as much B12 and twice as much all the things that you get, whatever those things might be. And the person eating 6,000 calories is going to get 3 times as much of all of those vitamins and minerals and enzymes and coenzymes and all the things that we consider nutrients. This is a huge part of the way that nature creates a safeguard for us in terms of not running into deficiencies,
Right.
say in April when the food isn't all that great or barely available.
Yeah.
Or should you have an accident and end up for a month that you're bedridden and you just can't do much and you're relying on your reserves. Well, if you don't have those reserves, you're nutritionally bankrupt. Which is how we see a tremendous number of people walking around nutritionally bankrupt. And it's scary. One of the things I learned in school that was even more scary was that as our technology catches up with our ability to see problems. For instance, it wasn't until the 80s that we could do bone density testing.
Right.
And so before then, for a person to be diagnosed with osteoporosis, they usually broke bones unexpectedly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we had no way to see the density of the bone.
Right.
Nowadays, you can gauge bone density by the percentage point, and it's pretty astonishing that that technology exists. In the same way, we know that if a relative needed a kidney in order to stay alive, you could give them a kidney. In other words, the body's redundant in design. It's overbuilt. You've got 2 kidneys. One is enough. You've got pinkies. You don't even need them.
Yeah.
You've got 2 eyes. One is enough. And it turns out that your heart, your liver, your kidneys, all these vital organs have to get to a point of about 75% failure before the average person is aware that there's a problem. Even bone density, about 75% failure before the average person is going to be aware that there's an issue. But an athlete will know far, far sooner.
Yeah.
A person who knows what to expect from their body in terms of performance will know if something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a number for you. Half that time, a tenth of that time. I mean, if anything's not right, they know. That, man, I always run this loop in 40 minutes, and now it's taken 45, and now it's taken 50. Something's wrong.
Exactly.
Time to find out.
Exactly.
So there's many reasons. Sorry. Thought I'd covered that. There's many reasons for us to be active. Not only that it's just a ton of fun.
Oh yeah.
Ton of fun. Here's
the
Senior Olympics motto saying, we don't stop playing because we grow old, but we grow old because we stop playing.
There you go.
And for me, I've got all kinds of fitness goals out in front of me right now. It's one of those times in life. I'm coming up on another decade, and I want to perform well.
Yeah.
Not only into the next decade, but through the next decade. And so for me, I just want to keep having fun. I like to be fit.
That's it.
Somebody's accused me on occasion of being super active just so I can eat more. And that's not the case. That has never been the case. And I don't spend that much time in activity every day. I'm just active every day. I don't work out for hours on end, although I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I don't have that kind of freedom. I've got a family to take care of. I've got a job that I work very diligently, taking care of my clients. I've got books that I'm writing. I've got a lot of things going on, fingers in a lot of pies, creating a new course now, a certification course that'll be out soon. And and I got to do a few handstands today and take a walk or two. Or hop on my bicycle or lift a little bit of do some strength building. But it's not an all-day passion.
Yeah, sure.
But we got to be active, or and people say it's a very common thing because we're hardwired to think of ourselves as healthy, and people will say, well, except for my this, I'm super healthy, except for the fact that I'm unfit, I'm super healthy. And I go, well, you can't be. You've got to be nutritionally, you're in trouble nutritionally. You depend on your heart, you depend on your organs. The mental toughness that comes from being physically active can't be matched anywhere. The decision-making power, so many things depend on it. And yet it's not the most important thing any more than you would say food is the most important thing. I mean, the important things, getting a balance and not having anything missing.
Yeah. Well, like you said in that recent video, what is the most important health aspect? He said, and you said it's the weakest link,
For
which is
sure.
quite true. I've been taken down by two deficiencies, right? Everything's perfect, yet micrograms missing of one thing, and that's it. You're done. I just couldn't get it together. One was sodium, which I did some dumb things at the beginning when I first gave up salt. Actually, I gave up salt after reading 80-10-10, but I did some silly things where I overhydrated and I diluted my sodium level. That brought me down. And then from that, that triggered a B12 deficiency. I can only imagine. I went back and got all my medical records from that time. I had this B12 deficiency, which really, really negatively impacted my life. Actually, it caused a severe depression, which I couldn't figure out. But I traced it back to when I was hyponatremic, when my sodium went so low. And I said, well, it's got to have something to do with that. But I have no evidence in my lab records, because when I went for these tests, nobody tested my B12 level, which is just
Right.
astonishing.
It's quite commonly missed.
Yeah.
Even B12 deficiency symptoms are quite commonly missed.
Well, they mimic a lot of other different things. And had I gone the traditional route, I'd have been a complete basket case. I mean, people thought I should be on antidepressants and that type of thing, which solves nothing, just causes more problems. You're just poisoning yourself. You didn't get to the real issue, which was B12. I did 2 B12 shots and that was it. It was done. It was like I remember you saying one time.
Yeah, it's night and day.
Oh my God. If you ever seen that movie Excalibur, where King Arthur is slumped in a chair and Percival comes with the Holy Grail and he takes a sip and that's it. He just wakes back up. It was like that. It was just so incredible. And then you're like, that's it. That's all it was. It's almost hard to believe that it was just that simple, but finding
it was just a flat tire. Really? I was just out of gas. You mean with spark plug? I was only missing spark plugs.
Oh my God.
Anything that we are, as you said earlier, the body's amazingly complex, tremendously interdependent on all the parts.
Yeah.
And yet so easy to take care of. So easy.
It really is.
People tell me all the time, oh, it must be so difficult living the way you do and being a raw fooder and having this and that. And I go, what's really hard? Being sick. Being sick is hard.
Oh, yeah.
I'm terrible at being sick.
I am too.
Being healthy is the easiest thing I've ever done.
Absolutely.
It's so much fun. I don't really spend any time on healthcare per se. I just go out and live healthfully automatically.
Yeah.
I go to bed at night, I get up and I move, I eat some fruits and vegetables, I improve myself in some way or another. I keep trying to learn. I keep trying, I keep learning new things and trying new things. So just recently took up figure skating. It's
really? Wow.
So challenging. I mean, I've got a lifetime of hockey skating. I know how to skate.
Right.
Put me on figure skates and it's a whole nother world. I can skate on them, but to actually figure skate, to turn and use the edges properly is, wow.
You're
so much learning having to happen.
You're challenging your body and mind in a whole different way, which is what we have to do. We have to keep challenging ourselves.
Well, we know that if a tree stops growing for a whole year, it's dead.
Yeah.
We haven't exactly figured out how to measure growth in adult humans, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised that if we don't grow in some way or another in the course of a year, we're dead. But maybe still alive, but we're brain dead. We've stopped growing. And the people who aren't growing, I mean, you're going to leave them in the dust.
And it's like almost like some people have one foot in the grave. They're in this rut, they're in this routine, and they've just etched this groove that they're stuck in. What is beautiful about natural hygiene and 80-10-10? It's based on nature, but it takes into account our true nature, which is undeniable the fact that we are biologically primates, more specifically anthropoid apes. And as you said, I think in the 8010 book, all anthropoid apes are herbivores, frugivores, not herbivore like a horse, but primarily frugivores. But greens are important. And there's also this group of people that seem to feel like the fruitarian way is superior. And I tell you, I've never had success with that. In the beginning, back in 1984, I thought that the raw diet was a fruit diet, and I never had success with that. It wasn't until I started adding salads, or I find non-sweet fruits too kind of fill in the gaps as well. You say that in the book that you should be getting 2 to 6% of your calories from
vegetables.
And
well, this is the thing where people sort of trip up, because fruits and vegetables are in fact technical terms, and as such they are used in different ways in different sciences. So to a botanist, the pineapple is not a fruit. The pineapple is a multiple fruit. The botanist would class the cucumber as fruit,
right,
along with 5 other things that most people would call a vegetable, and certainly a chef would call a vegetable. If we're in a kitchen, then we eat cucumbers and okra as a vegetable, pepper and eggplants and the like. We eat them as vegetables. But to a botanist, and only to a botanist, then okra is fruit, and almonds are fruit. And we just have to kind of hold our head and go, wait, yeah, but I don't eat them that way.
Right.
It doesn't seem like fruit when I'm, if I'm eating a pepper, it doesn't seem like a piece of fruit. I can't get any caloric density out of it. I understand that it's a fleshy body on the outside and seeds on the inside, but only in the kitchen do we think of it as vegetable.
Right.
So I don't want to confuse people. I will always talk about the culinary use. I'll always talk about the way most people eat it, because very few people are botanists.
Yeah.
Right. So I agree with you. I've never seen anybody make it on an all fruit diet when we're talking culinary fruit, what you call sweet fruit, if you will, the melons and acid and sweet fruit and subacid fruits, all the things that we eat, have a piece of fruit. But I have seen people do very well when they include the 6 what are known as vegetable fruits or botanical fruits, which include okra and eggplant and zucchini and pepper and cucumber and tomato. And when they include those, they do. I really can't fault that. And I don't wish to find fault. That, I want to know what works. Sure. I enjoy the heck out of leafy greens.
I do too.
I love lettuce. I love celery. Those 2 specifically, they make up a lot of my vegetable intake.
Yeah.
But so do cucumber and tomato make up a huge part of my vegetable intake every day.
Yeah. I could do the diet successfully as long as I have these vegetable fruits included. Like, say if I said, for some reason in my mind, I want to do 100% fruit, I could do it, but I'd have to have plenty of cucumber, tomato, bell peppers, and that type of thing. If it was just sweet fruit, no way. Or acid fruits, I just could never.
I've never seen anybody succeed for more than 9 to 18 months. In about 9 to 18 months, we start seeing health problems, predictable health decline, mental decline, dental decline, general inability to maintain weight, failure to thrive in a number of ways. I have seen deaths, people who just go, no, 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 I'm only eating watermelon. That's the best food. I
Oh my
won't eat
God.
anything but
Yeah.
watermelon.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, hate to say, it doesn't hold water. It won't work.
No.
And fortunately, I grew up in a family where we love vegetables.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
grew up in a rural area, so we ate out of the garden a lot, and so I enjoy. It's not a hardship, but it's also not a hardship if you know how to make food taste good in the first place.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I think the biggest objection people give me is they go, "Oh, I find raw food so difficult to digest," and I go, "Wait a minute. You find cauliflower and broccoli difficult to digest.
That's right.
Do you find fruit difficult to digest?" And no one has ever told me they have a problem digesting fruit.
Right.
So if we include, as you and I are happy to do, cucumbers and tomatoes and peppers for people who like them in our fruit intake, you're pretty well there, and you've covered your vegetables as well. So at that point, how much more do you need to eat? If you want to have avocado, you're even getting plenty of fats. If various people have various views on nuts and seeds, I'm willing to include some nuts and seeds. They're not a staple in my diet, but I'm certainly willing to eat them.
Yeah.
I prefer avocado to nuts or seeds. I prefer seeds to nuts. But that's a very, very small part of my diet, because just on fruits and vegetables alone, I'm getting 5 or 6% of my total calories for the day from fat.
Oh yeah, especially leafy greens, right? And
then by the time I add in leafy greens, I bump it up to 8, 9, 10%, and that's enough fats.
That really is. Yeah, we don't really have to add fats. I think that's a myth that people believe.
I've seen people add them and do fine. I've seen people not add them and do fine. I left some room for different viewpoints when I wrote 80-10. Intentionally left room for viewpoints, which is the difference between covert and overt fat. So if we just look at the fat that's in fruits and vegetables, you can see that it's 5, 6, 7, 8% of the average diet, or the average raw diet. If you're just eating fruits and vegetables, you're still getting 6 or 8% of your total calories from fat. But nobody sees any of that fat. We could call that covert. We don't think of fat in lettuce, even though we call it butter lettuce.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't think of the oil in a glass of orange juice as being a little bit of fat in your diet.
Right.
And for those people, if they want to add another 5 or even 10% of their calories from fatty food sources, more power to them.
Yeah.
And that's an ounce or two, depending on how many calories per day you eat. It's another ounce or two of nuts or seeds, or 3 or 4 ounces of avocado. It's certainly enough to make a great dressing for a salad.
That's it. That's where I'm using the nuts and seeds. Right now I'm using pumpkin seeds as a salad ingredient. And it's simple.
I'm using sunflower seeds.
I've done that. I've used all of them. It's just a variety, and it's just a beautiful thing. And when you look at the nutritional profile, you really are bumping up certain things that maybe were a little bit low on, like zinc. Maybe you need a little bit more zinc, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. Maybe you need a little more selenium, Brazil nuts. Maybe you need a little bit more omega-3, walnuts. So it's kind of nature covers the basis for us. We don't have to go to this or that. People always like, well, where do you get your protein, and where do you get this, and where do you get that? Especially protein. There's an obsession.
I think that question would have been answered by now.
Yeah, I mean, we see far more health issues from people concerned about protein than people who aren't concerned about protein. We're humans. We're primates. We're anthropoid apes. We don't have a high requirement for protein. We're athletes. People that can't run around the block are complaining about my diet. And I've demonstrated for them what I could do on a bicycle. Even sometimes, I'm regular in the gym. I got this Attila's gym here. That's around.
I'm waiting for the opening to ask you about the Attila's gym.
Yeah, great. Ian Smith, the owner, he's running for Congress now.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So, a lot has happened in the past 2 years. I'm sure they refused to close. Do you know the story about Attila's gym?
They refused to close. They refused to pay the fines. They just kept going. They don't do masking. Yeah.
So it's right around the corner. So there's no excuse for me not to do strength training. But when you
Please say hello to them from me.
I will.
Because I do my powerlifting at home, but for the people who are into it's the funniest thing in the world, right? People who are into staying healthy weren't allowed to go to the gym. The liquor
stores were open, right? Weren't the liquor stores?
Well, look, apparently
this was about protecting our health, right?
Yeah.
You wrote this book.
Beaches were closed.
Coke's postulates means a lot to me now because of the past 2 years, the madness of the past 2 years. And we knew what that was about. We knew, I'm going to put this on YouTube, so I'm going to do this. We knew it was about this. It was about other things as well. It was about this kind of insidious, tyrannical, lower aspect of human nature, which came to the fore. There were people that really enjoyed being petty tyrants in the past 2 years.
Well, I always want to take the higher ground. I want to look long-term. I want to build on my health. I'm not so worried about fighting disease or preventing disease. I know preventative medicine really took hold in the last 20 years, and it's not something I was ever interested in. I want very causative medicine. I want to cause health. I want to look at the requirements for health and encourage my clients and my patients to participate in those things that result in health. We want to look at what qualities do you want to have 10 years from now? Do you want to be stronger 10 years from now than you are now? Well, you better start strength training because it's not going to attack you in your sleep. Do you want to be, do you want to have better cardio or more flexibility or whatever it might be? It's time to start. Do you want to be able to say, I read 1,000 books in my life? How far through your reading list are you? It's time to start. And through all those different things, let's look at what does it take to bring you the things in life that you want to have coming your way, and then just start. All you have to do is take a step in the right direction. Writing a book was one of the most wonderful things ever because all I do is punch one key at a time. It was a lot of words, it's a lot of pages, a lot of concepts, but really it was just one key at a time. And I remember when I was a kid, there was some T-shirt or another that had the chemical formula for building fitness. And it was, they said, it's all about chemistry. It's a molecular thing. One molecule at a time, you have to wear out your sneakers. It's just like, oh yeah, one molecule at a time. You just wear out your sneakers until you need another pair. And you don't wear them all out, in one move. You just wear them down. And unlike machines that wear out from use, human beings wear out from misuse and disuse and lack of use, abuse. We thrive on use. Anything that you want to be able to do when you're 100, you better be doing it now. Like, start now, working towards it, because it doesn't get easier over the decades. It really doesn't get easier. And I remember when Jack LaLanne was 80 and I called him up to wish him happy birthday. He was a man I looked up to very much, and we had lots of conversations. And on his birthday, I asked him, how does it feel to be 80? And he read me the Riot Act. He said, 80 is so different than 20 or 40 or 60. He says, you just take care of yourself. Your body just keeps going. And I go, wow,
that's
okay.
Right.
Well, that's an interesting perspective, which I didn't understand back then. I was quite a young man. And but now I can look and go, well, you know what? The only reason for me to start thinking of myself as old is because other people say, wow, you're old.
I
Other than
said,
that, I don't
yeah,
feel old.
that's right.
I still lift as much as I've ever lifted. I can still put in a full day. My mind works clearly. In fact, everything still works, and for me, that's critically important. I still can have a ton of fun. I still go out with my daughter and do handstand contests, and it's just a ton of fun. So if you want to still be doing stuff, you got to be doing stuff now.
Yeah. And we see too many tragic examples of people who just didn't. And over the years, over the decades, they've by the time they're 80, they've lost this ability. They've lost the vitality. They've lost the movement.
I'm not really ready for the world to start closing in on me.
Yeah.
For a single room to be my entire life or something.
There's no
like
reason
that.
for that. Yeah.
It just
I've seen it happen to
happen.
people. I've seen it. And, but the thing, the hopeful message is it's never too late. It might be more difficult, but
that's very true. Anytime you improve your lifestyle, you improve your health, and your whole body improves accordingly. Anytime you improve your lifestyle, whatever it is. And it's a fascinating world, because this isn't an experiment that's ever been done, but it's my opinion that if we took a person on a standard Western diet who had this, that, or the next condition, and put them on a standard Western diet, but just half as much coffee, half as much pizza, half as much whatever it is they're eating, that there's a very good chance they'd overcome whatever ailments they have. They might not become world-class performers, but they could overcome most of the basic illnesses that people suffer from simply by just doing less harm to themselves than they are right now. If we could get to the point where we're not doing any harm and we're simply fueling the body with the proper fuel and giving ourselves enough sleep. It's funny, 100 years ago, the average man slept 9 hours. And when I was a kid, 50 years ago, the average was considered 8 hours a night was considered a good night's sleep. Today, the average American man is sleeping 7 hours a night, relying on stimulants to make up for the rest. But that wears out really, really quickly. We lose mental health on 7 hours a night, and then we lose physical health, and then we lose social health, and we see it all around us. There's just no way to sleep 7 hours a night. Now, especially on a cooked food diet, especially because I know for myself, even on a cooked vegan diet, I needed 20% to 25%. It basically was 2 hours. I needed 2 hours extra sleep on a cooked food diet than what I need on a raw food diet. So once again, not only am I not sick, my productivity goes up, but I'm sleeping 25% less than most people, and my productivity goes up, or my free time goes up, or my overall time of living goes up dramatically. We saw that with my daughter when she was sleeping 14 hours as a 1-year-old, and her friends were sleeping 19 and 20 hours. And by the time she was 2, she'd actually been awake twice as long as they had.
Yeah.
She'd lived an extra year of experience. And people said, wow, your vocabulary is so advanced, or your awareness, or your social interactions. They go, well, actually, she interacts like an older child because she's been awake so much more.
Hey,
it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So the raw food diet has so many advantages. Not just weight management becomes easy, or energy and vitality go through the roof. For me, the best part of it was the mental clarity.
Yeah,
I used to forget words all the time.
Yeah.
They'd be on the tip of my tongue, but I just couldn't tell you the word. I used to forget what we were talking about, because I love to veer off here
Yeah,
and then
sure,
veer off
sure.
there,
And then
look
come
at
back
you and
to
go,
it, but
what
then
were
you,
we
yeah.
saying? You know?
Yeah,
And
right.
and it used to happen to me all the time. And then I went
Yeah.
raw, and all of a sudden, my ability to learn things improved dramatically. My recall improved dramatically. My ability to stay on topic, which is, I remember doing talks back in my sporting days. I had to give various talks as when I was eating cooked food, and I'd forget what I was talking about. Be up on stage and forget what you're talking about isn't a pretty thing.
No, no,
I
no,
mean, I
no.
knew what I was there for, but I
Nobody
couldn't
to
remember the
rescue you.
exact thread of what I was trying to say.
You're
you know?
waiting for the guy with the cane to come yank you off.
Oh, and all of a sudden now, I can weave a fairly complicated story and still get back specifically to the point and the target and make
Right.
my point,
Right.
which I just love no end. So for me, I think for all the stuff about physical activity and having a body that we look at pro athletes, right? Like these men and women, and forget all the time that 80 something percent of them are in their 20s.
Yeah.
Very small percentage make it into their 30s,
Yeah.
and only 1 or 2% make it into their 40s, if that.
Yeah.
Might be less than 1%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, health and fitness
we're
are,
on 80-10-10 on a raw vegan diet,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm still doing a lot of sports. I won't say that I'm an athlete like I was when I was 40 or 50,
right.
But at 40 and 50, I was very much still an athlete like a 20 or 25-year-old.
Amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
And I'm seeing that happen. I mean, we watched Pam Bodler as a 45-year-old win national championships in her sport of sprint canoe. Second place was a 23-year-old.
Wow.
Like she was twice as old as the next oldest competitor.
Yeah.
And even had she competed amongst men, she would have taken fourth. But in the women, she just won it hands down. So we're watching the athletic careers be dramatically extended, which is what we see in nature. If you watch a flock of birds fly overhead, a flock of Canada geese, you can't really tell the young from the old. Or a herd of horses, I mean, you can tell the babies, but other than that, they all just look like adults.
Horses, yeah, they do.
But for us, we look at adults, and there's people who can pinpoint to 3 to 4 years how old we are. Certainly, the average person can tell what decade most people are in. It's rare if we're off by a whole decade.
Right.
So this doesn't speak well for our aging processes.
Well, look how far we've drifted. And like I said, it's been normalized. This unnatural diet has been normalized, and the natural lifestyle is seen as extreme and strange.
Well, I mean, you look
bizarre.
at conversation, Mark. Look at conversation. The typical conversations are about illnesses, doctors, medicines. They're not about projects and ideas and concepts and here's the next thing I'm going to be doing. It's more common to say I'm going to write a book than it ever is to write a book.
Yeah.
So a lot of people can't get past the idea, and I understand. Nobody wants their candy taken away. No addict wants his drug of choice taken away, and cooked food is a very addictive substance.
It really is.
But at some point, we decide in every aspect of our life, at some point, we decide what we want. If you make a list of the things you want and then put them in order based on how much you want them, then you can start to look and say, what am I willing to do in order to get the things that I want? For me, health was very important, because without my health, I couldn't help other people with their health. I couldn't take care of myself. I couldn't have the fun that I wanted to have. Maybe for some people, they don't care about their health, but I think they will when it goes away.
Not only that, if they were to experience the kind of clarity and vitality that you talk about, there's nothing that goes in your mouth that's really worth that.
Well, the expression that I love is, nothing tastes as good as feeling good feels.
No doubt. But the thing about it is, when you get into this lifestyle, right, and you start to get over these addictions, which I've struggled with addictions most of my adult life. I mean, it's really difficult to overcome these things. I really sympathize. But I mean, I had 2 papayas this morning. What more could I possibly want than that? I mean, it's just the most amazing fruit, right? I mean, come on. When you get a good piece of fruit, now the avocados from Mexico are coming in, and they're just so outrageously good.
Yeah.
And curly endive lettuce is just, for me, I just can't get enough of it. A good head of romaine. These things are so spectacular and glorious. They taste so much better than that other stuff we were eating. It's just that, you know how it becomes. It's like your taste buds become perverted
I
or
agree with
jaded.
you completely.
It
I
gets
agree
to
with
the
you
point where,
completely.
the restaurants, if they stop putting the amount of salt in the food, they'd go out of business because that's all people are tasting anymore.
It's kind of sad, isn't it? When people say, you have no taste, this food has no taste. And I go, well, that's because the only thing you can taste is salt. Salt deadens the taste buds' ability to taste anything else but salt. And I know you were a salt user, as you said, as you mentioned, and it's, the body can adapt to a little bit of salt.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Through hormones called aldosterone, and you can adapt a little bit so that
quite a bit, actually, in my experience, quite a bit,
so that you can hold on to a bit more salt. Well, the difference is basically double.
Yeah.
So for a non-salt using individual, an ounce of salt is enough to kill you. But for a person who eats salt every day, 10, 15 grams of salt or whatever, the average is about 15 grams these days. For them, it will take 2 ounces of salt to kill them, to just overload the aldosterone's ability to help you flush salt out of your system, or sodium, and hold on to more potassium instead to make up for the difference.
Right.
We can almost double. And that's what you experienced when you went hyponatremic, because as with most things, hormones are very slow to resolve their issues. And
that was in the first 8 months.
You can stop eating salt very quickly, but you can't manufacture high levels of aldosterone.
That's right.
It takes months to build that aldosterone production back up.
Yeah. I find
it can easily take a year to get to full production again after you stop eating salt.
And I find if I just have some salt here and there, I'm not nearly as resistant to going low in sodium. It's only when I have zero salt, no salt whatsoever, it's like I'm a salt conserving machine or a sodium conserving machine. And I think the body, that's really what we're designed to be. We came up in evolution eating high potassium diets, very low sodium diets. Our bodies are really set up for that. This is kind of an aberration, what's happening now with all this, sodium chloride, which has no place in the human body. I'm convinced.
There are what are known as primitive peoples living in tropical parts of the world, equatorial parts of the world, where the average temperature is about 102 degrees, 103 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And they consume no salt whatsoever in their diet.
Yeah.
They're forest people. They're not down at the coast, and they consume no salt. They eat a very high starch-based diet. It's definitely an 80-10-10 diet. It does include cooked, but zero salt. For the people who say you can't be athletic without consuming salt, I mean, these people are in high heat, very physically active all day, every day, no salt in their diet. Certainly, I've coached plenty of ultra athletes who consume no salt whatsoever. It's mythical. The only time you need to take salt as an athlete is if you include salt in your diet.
That's right.
Then you need to take it when you do sport, but otherwise, no. I stopped eating salt 51 years ago, and really never looked back.
My experience in Cambodia, I've done huge bike rides in Cambodia, and somebody asked me, well, how are you replacing the electrolytes? And I thought, well, that's not really an issue in Cambodia.
Banana.
Riding, as long as I'm not eating salt, it's
Right.
not an issue. If I start eating some salt, then it might be an issue. Then I'll have to look to replace it. I use celery juice if I ever go low. I find that works really well. I'm not
That's
a big,
plenty of sodium in celery.
yeah. And
Plenty
that
of sodium
works.
there.
That's the best thing. If I feel like I've gone a little low in sodium in the summer, maybe.
Well, it's funny
that does the
because
trick.
we know it does, and I just enjoy celery because I like celery.
I do too. Yeah.
Okay, I enjoy bananas because I like bananas. I eat them. I don't eat them for the potassium. I don't eat them for the
That's the thing.
calories.
Yeah.
I eat them because I like bananas.
Sure.
I eat mangoes because I like mangoes. I eat celery because I like celery. The lettuce that's coming out of my garden right now is like candy to me. It tastes so good.
Yeah. I know.
And compared to what I'm getting in stores, I mean, the lettuce in the garden is just outrageous.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to live in a place where I can grow lettuce at least a few months, if not 6 months out of a year. But I shun the idea of micromanaging my nutrition.
Yeah. It's too much up
Oh,
in
where
the
do you
head.
get your potassium? Oh, well, I eat bananas for that. And I
Yeah.
eat selenium. I eat Brazil nuts for the selenium, as you said, or the omega-3s. I'm eating walnuts for that. And I know that science. I've studied all that science. I've done the math so many times that I don't do the math anymore because I know I don't have to do the math. I can eat walnuts because I like walnuts, not because they're a great source of O3.
Sure.
Or anything like that. So I don't want people to get the misimpression, if you will, that nutrition is a complicated science in terms of us understanding it. That's very true. But nutrition as a complicated science in terms of us applying it, no. Eat fruits and vegetables.
That's it.
Eat enough fruits so that you
Yeah.
don't have any cravings for other sweets or starches or anything else, and eat enough vegetable matter so that you're never tempted to eat salt.
Yeah.
If you're looking around for something salty, you haven't been eating enough vegetables.
True.
End of story. And any other craving in terms of physical cravings, I understand we can have emotional, all sorts of issues, but in terms of physical craving, oh, I want something sweet. I'm looking around for dessert. I want something heavy at the end of the meal. Oh, I'm not feeling satiated. Any of those sort of things, you didn't eat enough fruit, and you should never, ever experience such cravings through eating enough fruits and vegetables.
That's right. Yeah. It covers all the bases. Okay, Dr. Doug, with that, I think we'll end this. This has been really informative, and thanks for the work you do. I know you have improved my life.
Thank you.
And I know you've improved so many people's lives. And this book is like a Bible to me. I have to say, this changed my life. It got me back on track. I don't want to say I knew all of this. I didn't, but I knew the basic premise. I was already aware. So when I read it, it was like, yeah, of course. What the heck have I been doing? It's time to get back to basics. And that's what this book is. It's basics. It's fruits and vegetables, fruits and tender leaves, ripe fruits. I like that shirt you have. I have that shirt. What is it? Raw, ripe. Can you rattle that
whole,
off?
fresh, ripe, raw, organic plants.
That's it.
Whole, fresh, ripe, raw, organic plants. It's just really simple. It's
Very
really simple.
It's really
and all
simple.
people have to do is increase the percentage. It's not like it has to be an overnight change.
No, it
just
doesn't have to be
increase the percentage of any of those factors, whole, fresh, ripe, raw, organic plants, any of those, all of those if you can, but just increase the percentage, because the direction you're going is the direction that you're going to, the destination is going to be at the end of that direction. So if you want to end up somewhere specific, it'd be good to go in that direction.
That's right. Right.
I want to end up eating whole, fresh, ripe, raw, organic plants every meal, no thought required, easy as pie. All I had to do was eat more fruits and vegetables. And then it reinforced itself because the results were so good. I couldn't picture them I just knew that it was the right thing to do
Yeah.
scientifically,
Mhm.
from an
Yeah.
environmental standpoint, animal rights standpoint. It didn't matter. Personal health and performance. It didn't really matter what the reasons were. Doing it is what got me to keep doing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Once it's proven for you, by you, then that's it. That's it. And you don't need to take anybody's word for it because you know it. You're living proof of it. I think I'm living proof of it. I know how I feel. And there's a
Exactly.
certain joy to it. And that's at the end of the day, it's joy. I feel joy just living because I'm not impeded by all these problems that we could be impeded by. Okay.
What a treat. A real treat to spend time with you, Mark. I look forward to the next time I get to see you face to
Yeah,
face.
you too.